I'm a man who believed that I died 20 years ago, and I live like a man who is dead already. I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Gary Webb. I am an investigative journalist, and in 1996 I wrote a series of stories entitled Dark Alliance, which was about CIA involvement in drug trafficking.
I knew a man who once said death smiles at us all. All a man can do is smile back.
We've both been skull and bone to the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go on.
I'm sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the rest.
Number 322.
I sad duty to report this afternoon that my friend and colleague, Tim Russert, collapsed and died early this afternoon.
I may die in this cell tonight or in the arena tomorrow. I am a slave. What possible difference can I make?
And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
What the fuck is up? Welcome to another Already Dead with Jose Galison and Austin Picard. I'm sorry, apologies ahead of time. You guys can probably hear my voice today. I'm a little bit under the weather. With that, I think we're probably going to keep this episode a little bit shorter today, but with on the flip side, I think we're probably going to keep the phone lines open throughout. So if you do want to call in, or if you want to hop into the voice chat or to the video chat, which is a perk that patrons get, patrons of me and or Austin, that we give the little StreamYard link in there, and you can hop in as a guest. That is available. So I guess you have roughly an hour to an hour and a half to where you can hop in. Oh, somebody said Rumble. Yeah, the Rumble stream's up. Somebody said Rumble stream's not up. Yes, it is. I have it up in the other. I have it up right now. I'm looking at it in the other thing. I have J Pro Plumbing right here saying good evening to everyone. That is from Rumble. So I don't know. I don't know what your issue is with the Rumble. I have noticed sometimes that the YouTube one seems to go live slightly before the Rumble one. So maybe you saw the YouTube notification, you went and checked Rumble, and yeah. So point being, go back to Rumble if that's where you prefer to go. But it is up. But anyways, we will be kind of doing chats throughout. It also gives you some time if you want to give me or Austin money so you can be a guest alongside me or him this episode. Gives you time to do so. But yeah, I am feeling like shit today. But Austin, what's up, dude?
What's up, brother? Man, I think we should we need to just wake up and finally just prioritize Israel, Jose, because clearly that hasn't been taking place. I just thought that was so fucking funny, man. Like,
oh, Kash Patel, yeah.
Which, honestly,
Kash Patel is one of those characters that's like everyone was going on about. Ooh, Kash Patel, and it was like, it was one of those things where I'm like, I don't know shit. I don't really know anything much about Kash Patel. I don't know if you do. I'm not someone who's like in the weeds of like knowing different politicians or people like that. I'm like political theory guy, conspiracy guy, parapolitics, but like specific players or specific like method or specific rules with how the bureaucracy plays out, like the kind of the ins and outs of like politics, like how many votes does it take to pass this law, or like I don't know that type of shit, but like stuff like like I said, like political theory or conspiracy type stuff I do know. So I don't know who this Kash Patel guy is, so I don't know if you know much of him. I know everyone seems super excited. Yeah. I mean, he seems okay. I don't. He seems. Yeah. Obviously, you made a joke about his Israel comments. Exactly. Which he does seem to be a big Israel stan. So, but I don't know. Whatever. That's not unusual, I guess, in the swamp. But yeah.
Yeah. I just see a common theme as is typically the case, right? So, I said this back when the first assassination attempt took place. Was basically just like, no matter what happens, Israel won the election in November. Like that was basically my takeaway from that personally. But yeah, I'm sure he's some sort of improvement in certain ways, but in more ways than one, they'll toe the establishment line, and that never is sufficient enough for me personally. But hey, I guess for some people, just an improvement is all they hope for. But I kind of feel like that's the technique in itself, which is just to kind of placate, any sort of right. Give the people a win here and there, allow the pendulum to swing here and there, right, and inevitably, right, that will serve as enough to kind of placate that sort of just inevitable revolutionary mindset, right? And so I kind of think that's just a policy of hemming us in more ways than one psychologically.
Yeah.
And I'm not at all surprised he would say something like that. I would like to look into him more personally because I'm sure there's a lot more there. But
still in captivity,
yeah,
Israeli
between
and American.
Let's watch this real
We will
quick.
shut off the machinery that feeds money into Iran. We will no longer have 100 hostages still in captivity, Israeli and American and otherwise, by Hamas and Iran's Hezbollah mercenary forces. We need America to wake up and prioritize Israel and bring home Israelis and make sure we stand by our number one ally in Israel.
Number one
We will
ally.
shut off the machinery that.
Which is funny. I thought it was kind of funny that someone I don't remember what I said. I think I actually quote tweeted that, and I said something along the lines of like I was like, we need to prioritize America, or I don't remember exactly what I said. And then somebody, which well-meaning, they were. This isn't me shitting on them or anything. They said something along the lines of like, well, like whatever. He's like essentially he's the head of the FBI. There's not foreign policy related, so who cares? And you're like, well, that doesn't matter until Israel pulls a little fucky wucky. And then I shared the picture of the Murrah Federal Building, and a picture, and it was like then also a picture of Strassmeyer's license, and then the picture, which I don't know how deep in the lore you are in this, where Danny Coulson, who was the head and like FBI guy, the guy who led the investigation into it, he said in his there was an email from him to JD Cash, in where he said that he thought that Strassmeyer was someone who either worked for the Germans or the Israel, and that he went native essentially, and so he went started working with them type deal. So, I mean, obviously that's not conclusive, but it's there are other examples, and then I put in there well, luckily Israel, kind of sarcastic, is luckily Israel's never killed anyone in an instance in mass or engaged in terrorism. Right. So it's and it even said in that email too, it even said something along the lines, I forget the specifics of kind of how higher ups essentially shuttled them off from it all. I can't remember the exact way he worded it, but he alluded to the fact that oh, that's why we didn't look into it further type deal. So you're it's not even that they even knew it was Israel. It's once they even got a whiff of it, they were kind of meh, all right, well, we'll drop that lead. You're what the fuck? so I mean, obviously they thought it could be German as well, but it's oh, They thought there was some sort of joint operation going, which, to be fair, I guess it probably wasn't specifically because of an Israel thing. They probably thought some sort of joint operation was going on, but
isn't
still.
That typically the case, though? I mean, weren't there many different intelligence agencies as well as foreign intelligence agencies represented at Waco, at the scene of Waco? I'm almost positive that
you're probably right. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's not something
I am
I know.
almost positive that Israeli intelligence was
I've
present.
heard that before. I swear.
Yeah.
Maybe it was on here that Israel was at there was literally was Israel at Waco.
Mm-hmm. It makes a lot of sense, right? That is typically how they operate with, the sort of coexisting in the intelligence apparatus, overlapping plausible deniability, and many times you can see the narrative easily claiming some sort of foreign operation infiltrated and went live. There are so many different ways you can kind of provide a false narrative and then just further muddy the playing field, right? To make it much more difficult for us to weed through what is true and what is not. And that's, man, is that not how an espionage, right? Techniques and tactics of espionage always kind of show up and surface and display themselves, So
Real quick,
I don't
back on Kash Patel. Namrock says here, how's he going to release Epstein files if he's prioritizing Israel? And that was a thing. He was yeah, exactly. But he did actually make quite a few good statements. I've seen a lot of good clips going around about how, like, we need to release the Epstein files or whatever, which is a bit of a misnomer. And then there was another thing, which I'm getting to a point here. There was another thing too, where like there was JFK. He was talking about JFK somewhere, and he said something along the lines of I've seen the entire. I've read the JFK files, like as if there's some files somewhere, which there probably are, obviously, as if there's like some sort of dossier or something. But he said something along the lines of like the 7 pages or something ridiculous, and like it was. I've seen a lot of people point out that like, what the fuck is he even talking about? Like, what files are you talking about having seen? It sounds like kind of like he's talking out of his ass. And then also on the other side, the Epstein list. I mean, to be fair, like, this could be him just like not being as knowledgeable and just kind of hopping onto a colloquialism. But there isn't an Epstein list. Like, that's my understanding, right? There's the black book that's already been out for forever
it's been
from Nick Bryan,
exactly.
which we've had on the show, doing heroic shit. But like, there is no fucking Epstein list. So the idea that there's an Epstein, like, what do you mean an Epstein list? It's like, no, we have his Rolodex, his black book, essentially. Like,
exactly.
But like, obviously, you can't like condemn someone just for knowing the guy. So, but it's like you have to do some research. But they do have like all their fucking the FBI took all the videotapes and all that shit.
Right.
But I know, I guess considered me doubtful. So
absolutely.
I mean, I guess just even the idea that he like would say Epstein list in that context, because it's like, oh, we'll release Epstein list, and you're like, what Epstein list? There is no Epstein list. Like, you're not going to release Epstein list that doesn't even exist. So,
that was my first reaction to it. Just internally was exactly that, because there seemed to be a lot of people under that misconception that there are these hidden
there's a magic list.
yeah, exactly. But really, like, all you have to do is look into the former Epstein house manager and that black book that you mentioned, because that is where really the most, I would say, the most damning, and I would also say most of the prominent names that are I would think the most important to mention were circled, and potential material witnesses who were considered perpetrators, and many of which were also named as perpetrators by Virginia Guffrey, who's one of the victims. And of course, that was Alan Dershowitz, like Jean-Luc Brunel, Les Wexner, of course, which was really kind of like the Clive Davis role of that Clive Davis played for Diddy in that type of scenario. And then Ehud Barak, former Prime Minister of Israel, he's visiting Epstein's Island, and they were in some very interesting business. They had some very interesting business interests that they were kind of like coexisting and attempting to achieve. So I don't know, man. Like, Donald Trump was also circled, which as a perpetrator, which I always found to be something that Nick Bryan always mentions, and something I think is worthwhile as far as should at least come up in context.
I still don't trust him.
I mean?
Yeah, like, I'm still like, I mean, I will say over this amount of time, I don't know. The longer it goes on, the less I find credibility to him being involved in any of that, because I just haven't seen anything. I mean, I know there have been, I believe there were some statements here and there. I forget. We'd have to get in the weeds of that, because I think there were some victims who made some sort of claims of seeing him or something like that. But it was pretty weak, if I recall. I don't know. I mean, I'm talking out my ass. I'm just saying I haven't seen much there so far, and I just feel like there would be
nothing like
so
fully condemning or damning evidence that proves that Trump was 100% a perpetrator and victimized these specific, named public victims. So it's not really necessarily the case, but it does always come up in context with Nick Bryant. And so I do trust the fact that he would find it important enough to mention it when he talks about Virginia Guffrey at the very least, and that house manager in the Black Book. But I mean, what really matters the most is what we can prove. And there was 21 different contact numbers for Bill Clinton. So that's fairly obvious and clear.
You're here. Corbo says, Trump had Trump modeling, had his own young girls to victimize. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I never got the vibe from him. He was into kids, so I could see him being into young models. So I don't know. I mean, whatever. Definitely. Have your fun, I guess. But which is a very, very different thing. So I'm good with that. Saying he wasn't so much of a client as part of the network himself. Now, I could buy into that a little bit more, considering his friends he's had. I think there is, God, I don't know who, what's his name? The new, he used to have long hair, and he was kind of new in the scene, just TikTok and stuff. Anyway, his theory was that
Ian Carroll, is that what you're talking about?
Ian Carroll. His theory was kind of along the lines of that Trump has been aware of these type of networks from a young age. Has essentially probably set himself up to be to be essentially not blackmailable. Because if you were aware of these from a young enough age, you could put yourself in position to where you could kind of rise above it. And I don't mean to say that as if he's the great savior or something, but more the idea of that here's something I can manipulate and I can keep myself apart from in a certain sense. You know what I mean? Just having knowledge of it and keeping yourself clean, and even if you are somewhat involved in the network, I guess depending on how you are. I just that's kind of the view. I don't know. I think there might be something to that, and it might have explanatory power for why all the elites seem to hate him. But because I know everyone could say, oh, this is all just some Masonic theater or some bullshit. You're sure, okay. But it's I don't know, this seems to be too damn good of theater. You know what I mean? It just seems too convincing. And I feel like they're usually not that convincing.
He is surrounded by many of, the usual suspects. And all of them are implicated in the Epstein network, whether it's Ghislaine or, or whoever their connection to the network is, they're implicated in the organization itself. So I don't know, his mentor, Roy Cohn, has always been the biggest, really red flag for me. It made me extremely skeptical as far as once you know who Roy Cohn is and his connection to the Anglo-Irish Vice Ring and Lord Mountbatten and Jimmy Savile and Roderick Frazier, Dr. Roderick Frazier, and all these different. I mean, we're talking about a pedophile with connections to this legitimate sex trafficking operation where they're just ransacking boys' homes and orphanages, and I mean, Savile himself could just go to these young girls' infirmaries and he had free access overnight, not visiting hours at all, and would just sadistically abuse them. And
Cohn's the one that you've brought up. I believe you've brought up multiple times. The quote you brought up, which I guess is a paraphrase, not so much a quote. It's probably, I doubt it's exactly correct, but he said something along the lines of that he did it to fight communism, and so it was oh, cool.
That's what Roger Stone said.
That's what
he's hey, my buddy Roy Cohn told me this when we were dealing in sexual blackmail. What the fuck, man? I don't know. It's hard.
Hey, if you're gonna fuck kids to stop the commies, who am I to say anything?
That's legitimately what the mindset seems to have been.
Okay, well, all right then. We'll just let that slide.
Right.
Fuck you, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he's been described, legitimately described as a sociopathic pedophile child trafficker, right? Yeah. And that is Trump's mentor. So if he could learn the ropes from anyone.
Yeah. Which speaking of, I finished True Detective season 1. which holy fucking shitballs. Have you watched it?
My God, brother.
Dude,
Yeah,
I gotta
watched it when it
say, I
first came
think
out.
that's the best season of television I've ever seen in my life.
That's how I felt.
It was so
Yeah.
it's so good. I mean, I don't know if it's just because maybe I'm a little bit biased because this is kind of like the area that I like to kind of research and then knowing ahead of time it was based on a real story, you're like, oh shit. But it was just a great story, great characters, great everything. Just
was very
everything
well
was
done,
all
too.
around great. Oh, real quick, sorry, we got a $20 Rumble rant from J Pro Plumbing. Says really appreciate both you guys' work. Appreciate it, bud. Thanks. Just so you guys know, you are able to do that on Rumble. Just so you guys know. But we do appreciate the love. But yeah, that's wild. I don't know if you've watched any other seasons. All I got, I will tell you, people out there, great. If you want to do engagement farming on Twitter, just say you just watched season 1 and you're really excited,
bro. I
and say
saw
you're
that.
really excited to go watch the other seasons. Because I've got so many fucking messages like, don't watch the other season, don't watch the other season, don't watch the other season. That's all I got was don't watch the other season, don't watch the other season, don't watch. So it's like I got a bajillion messages. So that's a great way. If you want to engage farm, just pretend like you're watching it for the first time. And that or you just finished the season and then you're about to watch, because everyone loves to tell you how awful the other seasons are.
Right. Yeah, and honestly, I think that just shows how well done the first season was, because it does truly stand alone as one of the best seasons of television ever made. Like, honestly, that's how I
Dude,
felt coming away from it.
I didn't even realize until people point this out there that trap house scene was like an entire single take.
Dude, that fucked
Just
me up.
nuts.
The energy in that episode was just like diabolical, man. Like the ability to kind of provoke that type of, man, they succeeded in every way. Honestly, it was fascinating and amazingly done. But yeah, I would agree that there's a significant decline in the subsequent seasons. But I will say that, like, rewatching the second season, it's not as bad as people make it out to be, because it is so much worse than the first one that, you know what I mean, that it's just like, yeah, it kind
Apparently
of
season
affects the
4 is like
perspective.
just absolute trash. And I guess the reasoning is I looked into it because I actually threw out an invite to the guy. I mean, it was a Hail Mary. I knew it wasn't going to happen because he's some like probably Hollywood writer. But the writer for True Detective, I hit up to be like, hey, you want to come on the show kind of deal? I mean, no response. But it's the same guy for 1 through 3, and then season 4 was somebody else. And I guess even it's funny. One of the first things I did when I looked him up was him like literally like I guess on Instagram or something. He's made like a thing of like shitting on season 4. So the guy who did season 1 and 3, so he's got like a whole like community of being like season 4 sucks.
That is so funny.
Which is pretty great. So, and then it was funny because the article I found was some guy being like, well, "Look at what a misogynist this guy is."
My God.
Because I guess the 4th season some hoorah woman power bullshit or something.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I honestly, man, like stopped after the second season. I don't think I watched any others, but yeah, it was amazing. I wasn't quite aware of the fact that it was based on a specific case. I knew that
shirt scandal.
yeah, that in itself, man. I mean, and as we were just talking about Roy Cohn, Richard Kerr was one of the people he abused that came from the Concora home, which he was like trafficking all around Europe. I mean, to America as well, and so he was abusing boys on both sides of the Atlantic, and selected that kid from out of Belfast and took him to Venice, Italy, and sexually abused him. It's like very crazy, but I see so many parallels with these networks. And then, brother, looking into Hosanna and then doing that episode on last Tuesday, I pretty much, after we talked Wednesday morning on your show, on the morning dump, I basically shelved it just to kind of like enjoy a couple days of kind of like, I don't know, embrace some sort of holiday emotional state that isn't completely involved with a sadistic child sex trafficking operation, right? Which man, I will say, it does get to you, man. Like when you look into the details of these things, and nothing has gotten to me more, like I've said before, than the Dutroux X dossier, but that is the feeling I was getting
Which, by the way, people out there, if you want to, right now on my morning dump show, I've been the last 30 minutes of every show, roughly, I've been going into like a huge detailed article, going into all the details of that. So you can follow along, even if you just want to fast forward to the end or whatever. Because the morning dump, for those who aren't aware, it's like my morning live streams, and it's kind of almost like a research environment. So it's like whatever articles I may or may not have read yet, just kind of going through stuff together. So like that article that I'm talking about, I haven't read completely myself, so it's like kind of fresh eyes through. I mean, there will be some things that I've already processed, but that's kind of like the morning dump. The idea is like you're sitting on the toilet, you're reading your phone type deal. Yeah, the Hosanna thing, I read up on that, not read up, but I listened up on that today with William Ramsey, because he's I guess done a few episodes on it, which surprisingly I actually searched for Hosanna, and like the first few that came up were him. I don't think there were many other people who've actually covered it. It's surprising how undercovered this is. This might have to be one of the next things I cover, like on the morning dump, find some sort of like really long article and kind of do what I've been doing with the Dutroux affair thing there. But I don't know. I found it particularly interesting. It was what, like a church, which I guess it did actually have a lot of parallels with True Detective, but it wasn't exactly it. But it was like over 20 victims, and it was like a church that then went to, within a few years, I guess after the father died, somehow immediately fucking flipped to now we're worshiping Satan and doing SRA. But it was weird. I guess they're worshiping Satan and Jesus at the same time, which I guess is supposedly also a thing the Process Church is known for doing, which then I guess also the Process Church is supposedly their headquarters are in Louisiana. So it's like, what is going on here? I mean, if you look at the Hosanna stuff, which I know you have, correct me if I'm wrong, is there really anything to show? Is there anything that's come out that's shown any sort of larger network? Because it seems like there isn't really any information there, but it almost feels like you would have to be. Like the idea that within a few years after the father died and they had a larger congregation that was kind of your standard church, and then it boom flips and becomes something else entirely. It's like, what the fuck happened here? You know what I mean?
Right. I think the fact that they were filming all of the abuse, right, and legitimately, like, there was. So first of all, like I said, I shelved it just so I could distance myself for a couple of days and kind of cleanse myself spiritually, and then realize like what I was gearing up for this week, because I'm effectively going to finish the solo deep dive on that exact topic. But so yeah, I kind of had to cleanse my palate for a moment, because it's going to get very dark here shortly. But so I will say that I haven't yet pinned down any sort of like credible, legitimate, tangible evidence that we can point to that proves the existence of a wider network beyond the fact of what was discovered at the properties themselves, which that seems to implicate all the different ingredients in the recipe that we've, kind of just been exposed to, many, many times before, which tend to implicate this sort of network of an enterprise, right? An enterprise of child pornography, and so that is exactly what I think was taking place, especially when you also consider like they found all these mattresses, right, with feces on them, and in a warehouse, and like, so I got finders. Just the finders immediately came to my mind from everything that was reported from Ramon J. Martinez, and am I good?
Oh, you're good.
Okay. I saw your reaction.
I was looking at the private chat. I saw Jules said I have a second monitor, and I was like, I don't understand what that. I was like, I don't know why you're telling me. I don't know what relevance this is. Sorry, go on. No, that's what that look was. There's nothing. I just saw there was a private chat from Jules. I was like, what the fuck is that? Sorry to derail us.
No worries,
Jules. What do you mean you have a second monitor? Real quick.
No, I was just saying, just in case you're wondering why I'm like looking this way.
I wasn't looking at anything. That's why I was confused. Okay. Why the fuck are you telling me about a second monitor? I was like, does that help me somehow? All right. All right, see you. It helps me. Okay. Well, hey, good. I wish I had a second monitor. All right, booting you. All right, we're back.
It was funny, though, because I mentioned this last week talking to Jules. Just the fact that Hosanna itself what translates to Hebrew, like translates from Hebrew to mean "please save us," I believe was what the term meant, and that's tragic as hell.
What's
But
it called, Hosanna before though?
yeah, no doubt.
Okay, because
But I'm just saying, like,
yeah.
yeah. That, I mean, clearly it wasn't like some sort of,
Yeah, it's just a synchronicity, essentially.
exactly
Yeah.
what it
Yeah.
seems to me, which I don't know, I tend to notice those things now at this point because they do resurface more often than not, these strange synchronicities that link these overlapping networks of abuse. And so I don't really ignore those things very often anymore, because with these cults, man, there's just like this esoteric framework that's at play that I was very unexposed to. I was unaware of this mentality, this perspective, this philosophy in life, and that itself is something that more of us should be exposed to, because it's almost as it really is in the vein of what we were talking about when Sam came on, right? Which is the fact that, well, they believe this, so that means something, right? It should mean enough to require our focus, and prioritization, as far as attempting to, at the very least, understand the foundational reasons as to why they would embrace those principles philosophically. Maybe through that path, we could potentially find some sort of like answer here for that makes some coherent explanation. But more often than not, like, I continue to witness, these psychological operations are very sophisticated, right? And so that you tend to see the cover up, you witness the cover up at play, and that rears its ugly head in every single one of these cases. And so that seems to have happened in Hosanna.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I'm getting
And
at. Like, obviously I haven't dug into this enough, but I'm like,
Mhm.
how has there been no tidbits that I've heard about a wider anything? Like, how does this just happen, like, seemingly overnight? Obviously, it was like a multiple years, but like that's way too short of a time for all this to happen. It
Right.
just seems bizarre that there wouldn't
And
be
the alleged
more
dynamic,
here,
yeah, the alleged dynamic between the perpetrators is strange. They're all separated from their husbands or wives. The wives seem to have played some strange pivotal power dynamic when it comes to, if you were to believe, right, the lead key perpetrator who came into the sheriff's office and made all of the allegations and admitted and confessed to all of these crimes in the first place. He apparently was convinced to do this through some form of kind of what seems to have been mind control, and also leverage and blackmail. They're using his kids, allegedly, according to him and his attorney, his wife, who also abused the children. She had I'll lay out the basic facts in just a second, but it's strange because it seems like she was, exploiting the fact that, one, he was allegedly living in the church, so he wasn't even living at home at this point, and with the kids even. And so it seems as if she was keeping the kids from him and using that as some sort of tool to manage him and control him in certain ways. Again, this is just within the documents that I was reading with the court case itself. It's psychologists are involved. So I first thought of, right, the False Memory Syndrome Foundation, right? Because you witness the psychiatrists involved in these victim witness accounts, right? Clearly affecting, right, the outcome of the statements of these child victims. And that it definitely happened in this case, as far as these kids came with a confession. They claim to have been, tragically abused, right, by their father. And then they subsequently recant and claim that none of that abuse took place, and they were forced to come up with a false confession, right? And so this is a method of mind control, by the way, right? To forcefully have your victim write false confessions. It's a psychological tactic of control.
Weren't
It's
they
very
doing that in
interesting that happened.
weren't they doing that in Jonestown or confessing
Oh,
sins or something like
dude,
that? I mean, this is
Uncle
common
Ted
in all
too.
these cults pretty
Yeah,
much. Yeah, so like,
yeah,
but still, that's the first one that came to mind.
definitely. But yeah, Ted Kaczynski, same thing as well. Yeah, so and the Columbine kids, man, that shot up the Columbine High School, same thing. They're having them write these false confessions and these, false eulogies, right? Fake eulogies for their own deaths. Like very strange. But
Yeah.
anyway,
But we got a
so
$15 Rumble rant from JC saying, "Be
yeah.
nice to be nice to Jules. He's a good boy. He is a good boy.
Jules is the
I'm being
best.
nice to him. I don't know. Did I sound mean? I'm sorry. I don't mean to.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't feel good. I sound a little more meaner than normal. I don't mean to. He's a good boy.
Dude.
I like him.
Meanwhile, man, I'm not going to segue at all. I'm going right back into Hosanna, but I just read this ridiculous. I heard Peter Thiel talking about the Antichrist and how modern technology is basically will help bring about ancient prophecy. And they're talking about rebuilding the Temple of Solomon, and
Isn't he fucking gay?
I'm telling you, man. Like it makes no.
Like, have you
fucking
read
sense
your
to me at
fucking
all.
Bible, dog?
It's so
I'm
strange
not
to hear
religious,
this
but it's
guy.
pretty clear about that shit.
100%.
Or
It's
you
so
just
fucking
played your
strange.
little fucking Jew games to fucking bring on the Moshiach. That seems more likely to me.
100%, man.
Yeah.
But anyway, but yeah, what I found last week about Hosanna that really kind of introduced it to the public was when that pastor, well, the son of the original pastor that was kind of like, held in high regard in his community, apparently the father of the main perpetrator. And it's pretty interesting because this guy, Louis LaMonica Jr., I believe was his name, he was the individual who just walks into this detective's office in Livingston, Louisiana, and confesses. But yeah, this Seattle Times article, it seems to do a decent job, at least kind of laying out the bare facts in regard to the case, because it starts out, the headline itself is "Cult-like Rituals, Sex Abuse Alleged at Church." And it talks about how this individual who named Donald Moore had witnessed, strange changes at this once, busy church at Hosanna and from his next door tire shop. And this was in Ponchatoula, Louisiana. And so it says, from his tire store next door, Donald Moore got an up close look at the strange changes that went on at the once bustling Hosanna church. The congregation had dwindled to a few reclusive members who chased away visitors. The windows were painted white so no one could see in, and just before it closed apparently it closed for good when all of this reclusive, behavior was taking place. And this is when 8 dump trucks came in and spread dirt over the church's back lot, which instantly I think McMartin, that's the first thing that comes to mind, because we now know for a fact there were tunnels under the school. We know for a fact there were makeshift tunnels that legitimately had, rooms that were created underneath the school, as well as.
To be fair, we don't know for a fact because I believe that it's a FOIA. It's based off of FOIA that came out in the Finder stuff that we know that there's tunnels, right?
No, it's a hold on. I have the document because it's like this.
If I recall correctly, that dropped during that came from a FOIA drop is where that document came from.
Yeah,
I believe we talked about it. The only reason I'm getting at is because I only say we don't know that because I am of the opinion that sometimes when we have drops like these, they may seed misinfo just to fuck with us. But am I saying that's misinfo? I don't know. You get to a point where you're like, I don't know what's real and what's not. So it's like to some extent I have to be like, I don't know. I mean, I kind of tend to defer to this.
Right.
So I'm with you. I'm just saying we know. I don't know. We don't really know anything when it comes to these spooks. So
right. No, I'm with you. I just I need to find the note here in a moment because I 100% know that they had an expert come in, and he is the individual who
Oh yeah.
legitimately confirmed the existence of these tunnel networks that existed underneath the school, and that dirt that was filled in was for sure, for certain, filled in dirt from this prior. It's not from the Gunderson site, man. It's legitimately from an actual expert who was brought in, who provided the land survey material required to prove his case. And again, I have all the notes somewhere in here. I should have you know, at least put a little bit of a better notation around it. But at some point, I'll go back through it because it's a very important point to be made, honestly, um, especially considering the fact that so much was made about the tunnels not existing, proving the fact that none of this happened, and that satanic panic was effectively, the end result and conclusion of the case itself. But I mean, the investigative leads memo is very strange as well because it proves that that Marion Petty had such an insane and intelligence background. I mean, he's legitimately, according to the memo, in 1939, right? So I mean, we're talking like in 19, which is funny because all of this, right, 39 39 days to what is it? This
Melee? Is it,
yeah,
I saw that.
39 days to
What
melee.
is that? So I don't mean to get
Okay,
off.
so
I saw you said you wanted to talk about that today, the 39 days
yeah,
of melee or to melee, but I don't know the fuck that is.
it's hilarious is what it
Okay.
is because basically this it's what Raven was talking about, David was talking about as far as this Cliff High, this individual named
Oh,
Cliff
oh, oh,
High.
that okay, so it's
Yeah,
that. It's like it's a Cliff
yep,
High thing. Okay, so it's
yep,
the alien shit. So the fake
exactly.
alien
The
invasion.
computer scientist,
Okay,
this
so the
linguist,
melee is because
computer
the idea is it's
program.
supposed to be like what two factions of aliens fighting in the sky, and then I think somehow we're also involved, like so like F-35s and shit probably or whatever.
No, you're
So
right.
that's a yeah.
Fire Pixie, you're right. Gunderson brought in the expert, but it doesn't, in my opinion, the credibility of said expert. I looked into it. I mean, I see no reason to question the credibility there. There are no strange connections right, that the individual seemed to possess, which would make me skeptical of his expertise. And he was very much held in high regard right, and in his line of work and his industry as well. So, yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, I think he even gave like was an advisor on the Indiana Jones films or something. Like he was that guy. But
And I would
anyway,
say I'm not saying any of these guys in the chat are trying to knee jerk say because it's a Gunderson did it, therefore it's
tunnels
not
existed,
legit.
brother.
But it
Yeah.
is like if we are to take the claim that Gunderson is a spook, or I mean, obviously he was a spook, but you know what I mean, like still a spook after the fact. I would say that like if anything, this could you could take the you could say that the reason he's pursuing that, and while he is technically on the side of truth here, just the simple fact of him pursuing it kind of like shitcoats it, probably to some extent, maybe you could say.
Right.
Or you could just say, like, he just also happens to be on the right track. I don't know. I'm just saying, just because he is some sort of spook doesn't mean he's full of shit. Like, I don't know. So,
Yeah. Well, the
yeah.
murder of Detective Paul Bynum is kind of a key, point to make in regard to the cover up of the tunnel's existence in the first place, as well as the animal sacrifice involved, because he found all these different, sacrificed rabbits and shit that were at the entrance of one of the tunnels and at one of the entry points, which wasn't at the school, but was on the property of the school.
Which Jose,
And,
they were
and
sacrificing cats and dogs, weren't they?
this is what I'm saying. The
Yeah.
ultimate evil. All of these things, there no coincidence here. You know what I'm saying? And McMartin, man, look into the witch hunt narrative. Look into Dr. Brown. Read about what happened at Presidio with Michael Aquino, and then keep questioning what happened at McMartin, because it's very important. Go read Alex Constantine's work on Welcome to Manhattan Beach, and tell me there's no legitimate evidence that proves that they were sadistically abusing these children and trafficking them throughout the day, you know? to various properties and locations to, anyway, I'm sorry. It's just like, it's a tragic thing. And the more and more that you read these excruciating details of what actually did take place, that, credible evidence proves is factual, then yeah, a bunch of preschoolers didn't make this up because they were coaxed by, psychiatrists that right, when legitimately the victim accounts were just completely just, I believe that they were clearly the false memory syndrome foundation infiltrated, right, and affected the witness accounts that were given, and also very much seemed to kind of threaten and dissuade other victims from even putting their account on the record. And so it helped, right, as far as the cover up is concerned, in kind of threatening people to stand down and refuse to come forward. So it's
Nicholas Lee say, didn't a bunch of preschoolers all corroborate turtle skeletons exactly where they found them? I don't remember turtle skeletons. I don't know if that jogs your memories.
Man, preschoolers corroborated turtle skeletons. Yeah, I don't know. That sounds pretty sophisticated for preschoolers. I don't know, man. Like,
by the way, real quick, Corbo, I'm actually not saying that you guys were saying that. I'm just clarifying it for other people that are saying, because we're alluding to that, like, hey, Gunderson could be some spook. I know you guys can chew and walk, chew gum and walk.
No doubt.
I'm not saying you guys are saying that. I'm just saying for other people out there that Gunderson could be full of shit, but also at the same time there'd be tunnels under the McMartin preschool.
Right.
So, like,
yeah, and again, like I said, I think Paul Bynum provides like a legitimate thread in as far as proving out, credible evidence that can at the very least point to the fact that there were tunnels that were filled in at McMartin. And who, by the way, who commissioned the construction of McMartin in the first place? The tunnels predated the preschool. So it's like you can look at it at the geographical survey of the area, and it proves all of this out. And so I don't know, like when it's actually within, and you're right, because this was within the FOIA, right? But still, like, why does the CIA have within the Finders case, right, this direct link to tunnels underneath McMartin preschool, especially when you know what the Finders was? I mean, oh my God.
But by the way, Jules got up for us here this cliff high, this alien thing. So it's like a minute-long video that we can, I guess, play for people to kind of give a better idea of what we're referring to. But yeah, I guess it's some sort of prediction that was supposed to come true today. I guess he supposedly predicted the Rogan-Trump thing. But yeah, I'm not gonna assume most people know this. Although I will say, like, my normie friends, like at work today, I was talking to them and they were like, they all knew. So I'm like, oh shit. But all right, go ahead.
Right. Have you seen Cliff High's worrying prediction for mid-July? If you don't know, Cliff High studies emotional language released throughout the world and finds that this can be used to predict events before they happen. Recently, he's been cautioning of an extreme tension release for mid-July. We wanted to see what exactly that would be and what we should look out for. So we decided to remote view it, and what we got back was unexpected. Here's a clip from our full session.
So the motion itself is aerial, arcing, above ground movement, which is fast, linear, cubular. It feels like a missile. It's moving fast at hypersonic speed, and it's remote piloted. The structure itself feels grey. It feels like it's destroyed and deaths are involved, and it's an important structure, which then gave me this kind of visual, which probably goes with that, missile hitting a structure kind of thing. So huge, big black cloud in the sky. And I didn't quite get it in this one, so I tried to do it again here, but essentially a silhouette of a city here with this really long, big, massive trading black cloud in the sky.
If you want to know fully what to expect for mid-July, then try out our memberships in our bio.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know what that has to do with. All right, I guess it's one of his older predictions. I don't know what he's predicting there. Honestly, between that and the remote viewing, I'm kind of like, okay.
Right. And by the way, I just saw in the chat, like, somebody mentioned some of the extraordinary claims made by the children as well, which a lot of those seem to have been coaxed by the false memory syndrome foundation psychiatrists who were infiltrated into, affecting the witness accounts. And so, anyway, we should probably segue, because I think it is important to, at the very least, what you were saying about this Cliff High individual is funny, because I find it important, right? Because to me, it's a window into really what is the transhumanist agenda, the fourth industrial revolution, even Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, fall perfectly in lockstep, right, with Project Bluebeam, in my mind. And so, that doesn't mean that entities don't exist. I mean, I definitely don't believe in alien grays. I don't believe in the Disclosure Project. I believe that this is a manufactured event, a seeded narrative, right, for generations. And I mean, we can trace this back to when even 1938, when Orson Welles, right, gave his War of the Worlds broadcast on CBS radio network. And who financed that? None other than the Rockefeller Foundation, right? And so it's like, again, the same entity which then proceeds to subsequently fund the Disclosure Project, right, with Stephen Greer and all these individuals. I wouldn't like this right here, this Cliff High. He's a computer programmer. Again, it falls in line with this new age religion, right? Because I think a key component, right, and a prioritized cog within this new age religious theological philosophy, is in line with merging man with computers, brain computer interfaces. You know what I'm saying? Like, clearly you have this goal to achieve the Internet of Everything, which is it's a legitimate, tactical goal and a benchmark, which, they've verbally admitted to. And so this is, like I said, this is an Orwellian version of this fourth industrial revolution, complete with biometric, digital IDs and like, crypto, right? Like I believe that crypto is clearly going to be a tool within the totalitarian technocratic state and be utilized as a blockchain-based climate wallet, which I just heard Whitney Webb talking about, which is exactly
CBDCs, yeah.
Yes, it's exactly what's going to develop, and those are even being developed at this very moment by the World Bank. And so to me, this is like a window into the globalist framework, man.
Yeah. I don't buy into you know me. I'm not a big I feel like sometimes I'm sitting here defending Trump, but I'm just trying to understand things. I do remember there was, I believe, when he came to the Libertarian convention, he made some comments about CBDCs and being against them, which once again, that doesn't mean that he's actually going to do anything meaningful, but it is like, hey, at least we're getting some rhetoric there, because I don't know. I still don't have a bead on what the fuck he is, because he does just say shit. I mean, if you look, and then also if you look at his like cabinet picks, it is like all over the fucking place. We had that dude recently that was the DEA guy who dropped out. He actually, he declined to take the position. But he's actually not too far from me over here in Tampa area. He was the sheriff here he's the one who arrested a pastor during COVID. But no, point being is like his cabinet picks are kind of all the place. So you can kind of get a read on where he's at. He's not super ideological or really on our team, but at the same time, like, I don't know. I think you can kind of bully him into certain ways. Maybe he's apt to please. Point being, I guess I'm just trying to get at with the CBDC thing. I think he might be, at least on track to be like, what the fuck is this shit?
Right.
And so I don't know. Maybe we can keep that moving. I am hesitant. I am a little fearful of where crypto could go. I've heard all the theories that Satoshi Nakamoto was actually a fucking Fed or some shit. This is some sort of like secret
some construct,
Fed op,
man.
which like I don't know. At that point, I'm like, I feel like the Fed op would just blew up on itself. So like,
well, I think it's a way to. They're going to utilize this to monetize natural assets, create a carbon tax. So This
you can't do that with Bitcoin. You could do that with CBDC. That's my point. So if you
but
like,
you could
I mean,
still
it
do
gives you the blueprint sort of for
You
your
could
own other
still
thing.
do it with banks as well. Like, I honestly believe that through the banking institutions, it's clearly between public-private partnerships and the ability to essentially provide these, what inevitably becomes like a token economy, right? Where they provide you with tokens, which they give you all of these convenient sort of, you know, they inevitably turn out to be like a convenient incentive, right, to buy into this new system. And then that new system, once is clearly already, constructed, like, this, it will be the bait and switch, and that tends to be the case, right? It's a policy of gradualism, right? So they inevitably, with these manufactured crises, they tend to gradually achieve their agenda their agenda items and their various benchmarks through just kind of moving the goalposts, right, consistently. And no one seems to, right, principally stand their ground, because honestly most people have been indoctrinated into these convenient systems, right? And so I think that this is like, honestly, it seems much more inevitable and closer to being right, kind of waiting in the wings, very close to being this dystopian reality that we are embracing at this very moment, where some of us aren't even aware, right, of the kind of the information silos and right, and these various echo chambers that we find ourselves in. And so, yeah, I just think that.
Whoa, real quick. We
Go
got,
ahead.
we had Pirate Pixie said, well, be fair, every now and then a father gets a partner's son. I'm not sure what he's referring to specifically.
Hunter Biden,
And then he
probably.
goes, yeah, I meant like what we were saying that taped that off. And then
Right.
Corbo said a son with alleged snuff films made in certain cannibal cabins in Missouri, even. I'm
Well,
going to
there you
need
go.
some information on that. I do not remember ever hearing that claim. I mean, I've heard the pedo stuff, but I don't think I've heard snuff
Right.
or cannibal cabins. I don't know. If you have any way to contact me, send me if you have any sort of information on that. Obviously, I'm assuming you don't have like a bulletproof source, or else this would be going further. I probably would have heard of it, but I have not heard that claim. That is wild. Which before we get out of here, I did want to back up, and I wanted to kind of refocus again on the Hosanna / True Detective thing. I mean, I guess it's not so much Hosanna as this is a True Detective component, which I guess spoiler a little bit here for people who haven't watched it. Oh, geez. Corbo said I talked to local law enforcement who were involved in the case. What the fuck, dude?
Damn.
All right, you need to send me over info or articles or that's what?
For real.
Okay. Anyways, back to the True Detective thing. I thought it did a really good job of showing. I mean, it's still a little bit confusing. I feel like I need to like maybe rewatch it again and again because it's that good. But to kind of process some of the things, but I think it did a good job of kind of showing how a cover up can kind of work, how these people kind of can get away with things, and then kind of how power could play into this, because spoiler alert, there is in the story there's this group there's at the end of the show they end up getting this one guy who's the one who actually perpetrated the murders or the snuffs of the film essentially. But it was part of a ritual where there were all sorts of people there, but they'd be wearing masks and stuff, and it's heavily alluded to that these are like powerful people probably. At one point the main character gets the snuff film, like literally steals it from the fucking like some governor or senator or governor or some shit like that. And then the guy dies shortly after, alluding to that, like once he was, exposed, he fucking, offed himself or someone offed him. Because once that snuff film was gone, like someone got it, he was out there, and you're like, oh shit. So I thought that did a good job of kind of showing how something like this could actually play out in real life. Because, like at the end, like they get the one guy, but they even said something along the lines of like, they're talking about the rest of the group, and they're like, well, that's just not the world we live in. Like, this is, you got to get what you can get type deal. And so it's like, I mean, even just getting the one guy was kind of an epic, accomplishment. And so the idea that they would get all of them, and then we've talked about snuff and stuff like that in the past, and that like the idea of the research, like doing investigating and trying to catch people who are kind of push snuff films. It's like, how do you do that? For one, like, you literally would have to get the snuff film, and even then, how do you prove it actually is real? It's not some sort of fake thing. It's borderline impossible, aside from commissioning one yourself or something. But at that point, now you're commissioning a death,
Yeah.
So it's like it becomes incredibly unethical. So it's this mechanism. It's kind of this it's kind of the idea of like contracts, like we've talked about before, like the Dutroux thing and stuff, and the idea of like these SRA type things could be, a lot of times are used as contracts for powerful people. So the idea of like just the fact that there being a snuff film, like let's say there is some group of elites that get together in the woods and do awful things to people and videotape it. It's like, well, now you've kind of created this like in-group thing to where like now we all have the secret we have to protect together. We are now like blood in, blood out type deal. I guess kind of want to get your thoughts on that and the dynamics of like how this applies to people in power, because I guess it kind of made me, as we were talking about this, it made me think about the Hosanna thing, and I'm like, I just feel like there's an element missing. And that's kind of like the element. Not saying it's going to be some crazy group. And also, I do think it kind of shows how something can take over a group. There was a chat earlier that kind of made me think about this. Let me see. I'm scrolling up, see if I can find it. It was way up there. Where the fuck are you? Yeah, so this country was built on this stuff. They left Europe for the New World / USA to be able to practice their religion here, which is something they got into in True Detective. They even like alluded to that, like this started a while back, like in the show, and this was something that kind of like an early New World type thing that started and it kind of carried on from there. But the idea is you could easily kind of, it would be a good way for a small entity to overtake, to insert themselves into power. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So kind of like the one character did in True Detective. And obviously there were probably other ones that we didn't get to meet in the show that they're kind of implying were also involved. I don't know, I just want to get your thoughts. I thought there was something interesting about that dynamic there.
Absolutely, man. I mean, it's kind of strange, but it makes a lot of sense that, they sort of force everyone in the group and in the cult to participate in the abuse. And so, yeah, there's the shared guilt that is going around. And so everyone is kind of clearly, attempting to keep this common secret, right? They have a common goal to remain clandestine in their abuse, obviously. But I think that what I found interesting was just kind of at the surface level was just the sheriff's deputy involvement, because again, I thought Dutroux, and I thought of him explaining how multiple sheriff's sheriff's deputies and officers of the law were actually helping him in his abductions and helped him abduct and Ifya Lembrix and Ann Marshall and so, yeah. There clearly, to me, there has to be a wider network, and I think that mainly what I think is the implicating factor there is just clearly the fact of what they discovered on the properties, as I mentioned before, which police it was in Ohio, which that's no coincidence to me, right? Because you have prominent networks of child trafficking and abuse in Ohio, right? And including Les Wexner himself, which has a prominent footprint in Ohio in regards to the Epstein network. So, these states, right, with deep corruption, over the decades, consistently resurface as clearly being the location of a lot of this abuse taking place and these networks forming and things of that nature. So I think the computers with the child pornography, the dozens of videotapes, hundreds of computer disks, like multiple boxes, large boxes of documents and photographs in the offices of the church, and yeah, I mean, soiled mattresses, like I said before, found at the Ohio property in a storage unit with dozens of videotapes and 9 garbage bags full of costumes, and 24 computers were also confiscated from the homes of the congregants in the Hosanna Church. So, yeah, I don't know. It seems as if like at least up to 25 were identified by the authorities, aged between 1 and 12, who were raped and used as sex objects. But yeah, the implication is that there are many more, and apparently individual authorities believed that there were hundreds even, and so that implicates a wider network, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
by the way, my buddy Abrogate D's here says my stepmother's sister got snuffed roughly 35 to 40 years ago. They finally found her body 2 years ago. When you say snuffed, do you mean like literally snuff films, like what I'm thinking? Because like I don't know, that's wild. I mean, but okay, that's nuts, dude. Sorry to hear that. By the way, Corbo, I don't even know how to break down what he's going on, but if you are in the chat, he is cooking with fire right now about stuff. Because we were talking about the Missouri thing, and then he brought up that I guess this person was supposedly allegedly married to Ghislaine Maxwell at one point. His dad was a Missouri sheriff, and he makes a point about which FBI agent was involved with the files of the case. Take a good guess. And then Paul Weissapal, and he said, "Ain't that a coincidence? He'd be investigating people belonging to the same white nationalist groups that Tim McVeigh was hanging with back in the day. What are the odds?" Which, for those who don't know, Paul Weissapal is the one that's the lookalike that people always point to as like the theory that supposedly if which I don't put much stock in, but I don't know. It's still kind of a wild. I mean, obviously he's kind of jumping all over here, connecting dots. I don't know to what extent. I mean, I would think he would probably even say he's speculating a lot here. But I mean, maybe his dot connecting here is legit, and that's wild if so. But all right. What is going on with what's going on with South Korea? Because I've seen stuff about it. I haven't got a chance to look into it. Jules is telling us to not forget about it before we get out of here. I guess it's something to do with like a civil war or some shit getting ready to pop off in South Korea. I guess we're going to get a North Korea and then a East South Korea and then a Southwest Korea now. We're just going to keep getting smaller and smaller Koreas over time. We're just going to keep breaking off Koreas.
Right. Well, I know.
For those who don't know, that's what's happened with North and South Korea. It used to be one. So
right.
Yeah.
No, I just think, man, clearly this is, the international chessboard at play here with the foreign policy aspect of utilizing proxy forces. You see it happening in Syria at this very moment with HTS and their involvement, right? The offshoot of Al Qaeda and these clearly U.S. State Department backed, radical Islamic terrorists who we're utilizing as a proxy force, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, and then you have simultaneously while you have these proxy forces kind of popping off in Syria and the escalation in Ukraine, we have this martial law imposed in South Korea, right? And it seems like apparently it's the first declaration of martial law since the country was democratized in like 87 or something. And so anyway, it's strange, but it seems as if there's a lot of internal strife and clear turmoil taking place in South Korea, which is an obvious ally of the West. So I wonder what the significant chess piece is here, in regard to all that I know is that I had mentioned the fact that they were clearly provoking North Korea already, as far as they were provoking them by flying drones into their airspace of the capital city and dropping leaflets and pamphlets, like encouraging them to revolt against the state. And so it's like, do you not just see the Kurds like instantly, right? And the and this oh, I'm sorry, but the U.S. State Department doesn't we don't concern ourselves with Middle Eastern border disputes, right? But we use it as a pretext, to invade in the original Iraq War. And what did we do? The CIA and the U.S. State Department and intelligence-backed initiatives dropped leaflets and pamphlets into Kurdish areas in Iraq, on the border, right, of Kurdistan when they seized the oil fields, right, when they were given a blinking green light. Saddam was when they approached the U.S. diplomats, and so to me, it just again proves to be some sort of State Department policy provoking some type of response. So I don't know exactly what factions are behind this domestic turmoil within South Korea, but yeah, I would think that this is by design, right? And so I'll have to look into it at a deeper level.
Revolution always is.
Yeah, it typically is, especially when I'm only witnessing escalation in all these different regions, including with Taiwan, right? And so it's like, man, I don't know. It just very much seems like a lot of this has been agreed upon. To what level, I'm not entirely certain, but I just think that the peasant class, the underclass, as I like to say, right, has been, really effectively utilized as cannon fodder, and they don't give a fuck if they have to, uh, right, basically sacrifice your children. I mean, this is of no concern to the ruling class, and so, in my opinion, there is for certain a wider regional conflict that is a powder keg of to some degree, and there will be international conflicts, consistently escalating in the very near future. And yeah, this is, in my mind, a part of the globalist framework.
Yeah.
And so once again, when you have James Jeffrey, who Dave DeCamp mentioned in his recent article about Syria, he explains who James Jeffrey, by the way, is he is an American diplomat who served as the special envoy to Syria under the Trump administration from 2018 to 2020. And he said in a 2021 interview that HTS, this radical Islamic Al-Qaeda offshoot, is an asset to the U.S.'s strategy in Idlib, the northwestern Syrian province, and that and that's been under HTS control since apparently 2017. So it's they're clearly communicating in more ways than one. I view this as really just an extension of the U.S. State Department, and once again, they're up to regime change, right?
Yeah.
And they've been after Assad for forever.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm ready for this lame duck session to be over. Not that I necessarily think Trump is some great white savior, but at the very least, there isn't this excuse of like, well, we're in a lame duck session, so what the fuck are you guys going to do about it? Like, there's no political consequences for anyone who does really anything at this point, or at least from the left that do anything at this point in time, especially Biden. Like, who gives a fuck? But all right, we're at about 1:15. I think we've covered basically all we want to do. I feel like shit. So let's get out of here. By the way, I do have our episode should be dropping on Friday for the public. I was going to drop it last week, but I was having host issues, so I was like, whatever, I'll push it to next week. But for my paywalled stuff, so I have actually coming on the show, which if you're a patron, you'll be able to access it. I have William Ramsey coming back on Thursday.
Oh, yeah.
So Thursday at 9:30, if you're a patron, you can watch it live or like after. But it'll be about a week after that till it comes out publicly. But me and him are going to be talking about Aleister Crowley, because I've heard him say something about it. I've heard him say he wrote a book on it before, but I always forget about it. And just for some reason, me think I want to talk about Aleister Crowley. I've always wanted to do an episode on Aleister Crowley, just because he's such a weird character. But we're going to do it on Thursday, so I'm looking forward to having him on. But yeah, I'll only be probably doing one morning dump this week too. That'll be maybe Friday, but so it'll be Thursday and maybe Friday, depending on my work. And I think next week I should be going back to normal schedule. My wife took off this week, so I went back and I picked up extra shifts this week. So, but next week I'll be back to the normal schedule. Should be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday morning dump. So tune in around roughly 10 Eastern in the morning. You can pop in for those. That's on No Way Jose and Rumble. And I also send it out to Twitter, but Twitter is gay for the video player. Who the fuck uses that? Austin, you want to let them know where they can find you at?
For sure, buddy.
You
guys. Yep. You guys just follow me at the Underclass Podcast. I appreciate all the support from anyone who engages with my content. It means the world to me, honestly, guys. Just follow me at the Underclass Podcast. Buzzsprout and Patreon are the best places to really support me. And like I said last week, I'm going to be following through and kind of finishing out this deep dive on Hosanna, which will involve like reinforcing examples of satanic ritual abuse, and hopefully I can get a little bit further down the rabbit hole and kind of pin down a much more wider network. I mean, not that I'm hoping that's the case, but it very much seems like there's more to this story.
Feels obvious.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so that will be my impending solo project, which is on its way. But so that's what I'll be focusing on the rest of the week. But beyond that, man, we should at some point. Man, I don't know. I was reading so much about just random shit and got completely into how the doomsday clock and the population bomb and everything was legitimately like these, special interest groups, clearly with like Rockefeller family ties and all of these various things that tie into the Disclosure Project, which I mentioned earlier before, and Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030. Fourth Industrial Revolution.
It all comes back to depopulation. All these fucking elite cocksuckers who want us dead.
Exactly. Transhumanist agenda. Yep. But anyway, we'll just talk next week, I would imagine. But
hell yeah, brother. Well, those who want to support me monetarily, patreon.com, just No Way Jose 2020. The lowest level is $2. That gives you the early access to those episodes, like I was referring to with that William Ramsey episode I'm doing on Thursday. Then also it gives you access to where you can be a talking head alongside me and Austin on these Already Deads on Tuesdays. And the highest levels of my sponsors, I read them off every episode. My co-host on Tower Gang, at Tower Gang Toad, at Abrogate D's, at ZOVERACK, at _Infinite Zeal. Then Jacob Daniel of the Biblical Anarchy podcast. You can follow him at Biblical Anarchy. Then Tim Tuttle at Jolly on Klebold. Then Will Bell, who has this delicious blueberry rabbit eye wine. And a big fan of the show, at Real Josh Elliott. And then Torrin May. I appreciate you guys. Appreciate the support. Appreciate you helping me do what I do. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Oh yeah, guys. Also, try to put reviews on. I'm really bad about pushing this. I think I might start reading on the show sometimes. But put reviews, especially like iTunes and stuff. iTunes and Spotify, the big ones. But put reviews there, 5-star reviews. Leave a little note for me. You can't leave a note on Spotify, but on iTunes you can. Maybe I should start reading those. But with that, guys, we'll go ahead and get out of here. Love you all. Toodles. Bye-bye.